Ceddanne Rafaela has been a surprise standout so far for the Boston Red Sox, but what exactly has he done to get here? Find out on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate, and currently also the host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part is, it's free. So if it's free, might as well check it out. We are part of your feed every single day. And the Red Sox are coming off a series sweep of the Oakland A's, and they're definitely off to a strong season, maybe a little bit of a stronger start than people might have thought. So I'm happy to bring you another episode of the show where the Red Sox have good things for us to talk about. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Thanks as always for tuning into the show. And as I bring you today's show, I actually have a special guest with me. And I figured what better way to hear about certain players on this Red Sox roster than a guy who sees the development firsthand of some of these players at the minor league level. Worcester Red Sox broadcaster Mike Antonellis. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it snowed here in New England. I think Maine's going to have problems with their opener on Friday. It was it was historic. The Woo Sox had their first ever snow out. So you have fun with it. It's a long season, but I'm doing great and gives you a night off. And there's plenty of games. So it gave me an opportunity to do this with you.
Yeah, right. Honestly, I was sitting here like it's April. Why is it snowing? Yeah. I am ready for the spring and the warm weather, and I do not associate baseball season with snow by any means. I'm so happy to have you on here. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me a little bit. And one thing that I definitely wanted to get your perspective on is a player who has made an impact already in his short time so far with the Boston Red Sox, and that is Ceddanne Rafaela. He spent about a year in Portland before being called up to Worcester in June of 2023, and then didn't spend that much time in Worcester before, surprise, being a September call-up to Boston last year. He's been fantastic in the outfield, especially so far in his short stint in Boston. Looked very good, made some really nice plays in the Oakland series and a couple nice plays against the Mariners as well. I'm looking for things to hopefully start to click a little bit more for him at the plate. But what's something that you kind of noticed about him when he was playing in Worcester that has helped him to be so successful so quickly so far here in Boston?
Yeah, I think the good center fielders are easy to see. I mean, when you watch someone like him, you know right away. It's of course it's the first step to the ball. I mean, his reads anywhere to his left, to his right. He can get to anything, and of course the speed is there. But you still, if you can't read the baseball off the bat, forget it. He gets unbelievable reads. He's blessed to do that. Alex Cora knew that. They know defensively. And we saw this last year that he's a big league center fielder. I mean, defensively, it's hands down. There's no middle with him in the outfield. He is elite. I don't see him declining in that. He could get better, but he can also play a little bit infield. Of course, it's going to be, will he hit? And the big thing was his swing decisions. But like I've told a lot of people, a lot of the guys that come up, they're going to have a wart or two. I mean, they're not all perfect. I was with Devers in Portland, and it was his defense. They're all going to have something about them that they're going to have to work on. He's extremely confident, but I had the privilege the day he got called up. Emma Tiedemann of the Portland Sea Dogs, she actually came up to fill in on radio with me, and then we did TV the next day. And she told me pregame the first day, when a ball's hit out there, make sure you don't give up on it, because he gets the things the balls you won't think he'll get to. And it was a huge tip, because there were balls hit in the gaps that I said there's no chance, and he gets to them. So what I really like about his development was he was mad that he didn't start the year in Worcester last year, and instead of declining, he dominated in Portland, and he made he made the Red Sox move him up. And so he did things they asked him to, and I think that's what you want to see. You want to see guys develop. And I do think he's going to hit. The other sneaky thing about him is he's got a little bit of pop in that bat. And I think it could be if it goes to plan, I think a Ceddanne Rafaela 1-2 in the order could be something maybe we see down the road.
Yeah, I've been interested in seeing, how that lineup is going to play out, because right now they have, Ceddanne hitting consistently in the leadoff spot, which I do like and I do agree with. I think Trevor Story right now is hitting a little too high up in the lineup. I think, him hitting in the 3-hole is tough right now, because he hasn't quite figured things out fully at the plate yet. I mean, he had a big game the other night. I'm hoping that generates something in him and he starts to get his swing back. Tyler O'Neill obviously has made a quick impact too. He batted second the other day. But there's kind of, a lot of opportunities for somebody like Rafaela to slide up higher up into that lineup. I'm just interested in seeing his development at the plate and see if it's something that he could make happen down the road.
Yeah, because he can also he's got really good power and can hit the ball to all fields. That's what you like. I think Trevor Story too, what he brings, we're seeing it right off the bat, is he's made some plays that I've seen in games that I know last year would not have happened, which would have led in the big leagues. One bad play can lead to a huge inning. I feel like he's cut a lot of innings short, where last year we did not see that early on. So that's been impressive. I think he's been swinging it better. Tyler O'Neill, I think, is a more athletic version of Adam Duvall. I think the Red Sox made a clear statement in what they want this year. And I've been telling people this. I'm not against the analytics at all. I do like all those advanced numbers, but playing the game the right way goes back 100 years, running the bases right, making plays defensively. And when you don't have it, which you saw last year, it really hurts you. They lost a lot of games last year on really bad plays. They actually weren't that bad of an offensive team. They were I think they scored more runs than Baltimore. New York the Yankees hit 227, won 82 games because they pitched, which shows you can have really bare bones of hitting and win. I think that's the glaring difference to me. And I know they just came off a series where they didn't play a strong team, but it doesn't matter in baseball. But I've noticed a glaring difference in them doing the little things right. And last year they didn't. And I know that really killed the insides of Alex Cora too. I know he lost a lot of weight this offseason from running, but I thought it was from all those errors last year.
Yeah, right. Honestly, though, and I mean, the errors, it's interesting you bring that up, because I talked about this on the show the other day, is as much as Trevor Story offensively hasn't fully figured things out yet, that infield defense looks so much more cohesive with him playing shortstop again. And, even though he only got to play a couple months of the season last year, him coming back just makes a tremendous difference in that infield too. And that's something that's so important, is they finally look a lot more competent overall as a defensive unit. I think part of that too is not having Yoshida really have to play defense anymore, because his defense was obviously the weak part of his game. So having him primarily play DH, now that you're slotting in guys like Rafaela, Ceddanne, and O'Neill, who are all perfectly capable defensive players, it really does make a difference.
Yeah, no, I think you could see the plan that Craig Breslow had. And I know people were upset about Turner and Duvall, which I understand, but I try to counter it and correlate it with, okay, but where would Turner play? Because you have Yoshida. He can't play a position. He'd be the first to tell you that. He's not playing a position in Toronto. Adam Duvall's not a good outfielder. He'd be the first to tell you that. He's not playing exclusively. So if those guys are not going to play exclusively, they have to kind of be built like O'Neill. O'Neill can run, but he's got power. But I think he's going to play maybe a lot more. I didn't think Abreu could be the odd man out, but it looks like he could be because I think Tyler O'Neill was such a good get. You look back 2 years ago, that guy had 28 home runs for the Cardinals. This was not. I think it got ridiculed maybe a little bit, like they just snatched off the cheap end. This is a pretty good outfielder. A few years ago, he had a down year last year, and that's good strategy. When a guy's value's down, you have a chance to get him cheaper and play him every day. But I think what you saw already, he's very capable of doing a lot of good things. So I like how they're built better in those X factor things. You can't have a game like last year when Reese McGuire is just running recklessly on a fly ball to left field. Like those things can't happen in the big leagues. You cannot. Devers getting picked off the other day on a line drive to short. You can't win at that level. We saw in the minor leagues because games changed a little the way that they teach it. I think at the lower levels or the amateur game. And I know how Alex Cora is, the way he played the game and the way he ran the bases and played defense. They know you got to get back to that because if you look around, Gabby, the teams that win are very good defensively and run the bases correctly.
Yeah, there's fundamentals. It's the fundamentals of baseball that I feel like the Red Sox lacked a ton of last year. And it seems like, obviously they have their mishaps. Like, in Wednesday's game, they did have some sloppy defense in the later innings of that game. Yeah. And I thought that was going to end up costing them the game. And I was like, this is going to be one of those games that they just lose this because these errors are going to come back to bite them because we saw that all season long last year. And then they were able to hold on, even though it was a roller coaster, because Kenley Jansen provides a roller coaster when he's out there too. Yeah. But overall, they pulled it out. But those are the types of things that will backfire if they are playing against more competitive teams. So it's, overall, I like that they look a lot better as a defensive unit, and they look like they're understanding the fundamentals of baseball a little bit better. And I like the energy overall of this team. And I think bringing somebody like Rafaela in there, who's just so excited to have gotten his opportunity on the opening day roster and can do a lot of different things. I think that versatility is going to pay dividends for him later on.
I do too. I mean, I've been saying this for a while. You could see the game getting younger, even in the minor leagues, because I noticed I started in AA in 04 in Erie. Then I went to Portland. But as I got older in my career, the guys were playing less in AA. They were coming through quicker. Everybody's getting to the big leagues quicker. There is a different way, I think, of doing things now where a lot of teams are homegrown. Look what Baltimore's done. And you have to be young and you have to be athletic and you have to have more than one or two guys be able to run. I think that's kind of the sign, the sign of the times now, because I think the pitching has gotten so much better in bullpens. So it might be hard to string together one or two hits in the later innings. So if you can have guys that can get on base and then run, like Duran, he changes the whole game. He can wreck the game just with his legs, and Rafaela can as well. And I think they did a good job the way that they built their team defensively and running the bases. And I think in the pitching, they made some really sleeper moves. We'll see how it pans out, but I'm surprised that Seattle gave up on Isaiah Campbell for Luis Arias, because that looked like maybe a position you could find, but who knows? But that stuff really plays.
It absolutely does. Yeah. And I mean, obviously Breslow's a pitching guy, and he prioritized getting pitching in return with the trades that he did make this offseason, which I really liked about him, because the Red Sox definitely needed the pitching, and most of all pitching depth more than anything, because that's something that this team lacked prior to this season. And having Breslow in there, who really is a pitching mind and has a pitching mindset, I think is going to pay dividends for this team. But there is a player, speaking of pitching, who surprisingly got sent down to AAA right before the season started. And I think people were surprised about it. So coming up next, I'm going to get Mike's thoughts on this pitcher who was very good with the Red Sox last year. Are you ever in a situation where you're looking to just get quick meals, you don't have time to cook, and Everything's just ready to go for you. You can eat stress-free this spring with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie. Also discover more than 60 add-ons every week, like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and beverages to help you stay fueled and feel good all day long. Honestly, it's fantastic because a lot of times we don't have time to cook and we all get busy. So it makes sense if you want a quick meal, and there's a lot of different options you can get. And whatever your craving is for that day, you can get that. So head to factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 and use code LockedOnMLB50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box. That's code LockedOnMLB50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. No complaints there. And for me, somebody who doesn't have time to cook all the time, I definitely do appreciate that, as should you. PrizePicks also you should appreciate because it's a great way to play daily fantasy sports. Basically, it gives you a lot of different options to play. Essentially, you just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, and then you can watch the winnings roll in. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick or more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. Download the app today and use code LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match up to $100 if you use code LockedOnMLB. It's really a great offer, and if you're looking to play fantasy baseball all season long, PrizePicks helps you make smart picks every day. So in talking about the Boston Red Sox and the moves that they made this offseason, what they look like so far this season, obviously it's a very small sample size. We are only a handful of games into the season, but it's definitely promising the start that the Red Sox have had. There were a lot of instances so far already this year where I've said last year's team would have lost this game. And that is definitely a good sign that there's improvement there. Overall, definitely some more players I'm looking forward to seeing the development of. And the bullpen in particular is a place where there are a mix of new players on this roster that could significantly contribute to the bullpen and have already started to look good in their outings so far. Definitely am interested in seeing more. But one intriguing player that the Red Sox sent down to AAA prior to the season starting is Brennan Bernardino, and he had a good season out of the bullpen last year. So it definitely was surprising to a lot of people. I think that the Red Sox didn't keep him on the opening day roster. For one, just to have another lefty option in the pen, and for two, just with how good he was last year and just the uncertainty surrounding Joely Rodriguez with him spending a lot of the season last year on the IL. So, Mike, I wanted to definitely get your thoughts on Bernardino and a reason for why you feel like the Red Sox thought it was better for him to start in AAA.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, he had a good spring. I know that the buzz out there is that he had options and Joely Rodriguez didn't. I don't know if they would do it for that reason. I mean, you're not going to have your best players based on options. I don't know if I mean, that could be, but I don't think so. I just think maybe there was just a difference in, you can't always go by numbers. They have other things that they look at and metrics that they just felt Joely was a little bit better. He didn't have a great chance last year. He's been a pretty good pitcher when he is healthy. But I was surprised that they've only had one lefty in the bullpen. I know that there's that 3-batter rule now, but still, you would think that maybe you'd want to have two. But then when you look at the guys they kept, it's hard to argue which one of those guys would you not keep. Greg Weissert, who we saw a lot of in Scranton, and I've loved him for years, and I thought that was a great pickup for the Red Sox. But, maybe it is just they want to see something between. They want to see if Rodriguez has anything left, and I think it'll be a short leash. If he's not better in his next couple outings, I think Bernardino was up, and I think they know that he is someone that can handle going down to Worcester and right the ship and be back up there. But he's been what a story he's been. I mean, He was picked up off the street. A lot of guys are, though. A lot of relievers around baseball are. And, I hope he gets back there because he's really earned he's really earned it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Joely Rodriguez is I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt because he didn't get to play a lot last year, so he wasn't really given a fair opportunity to show what he possibly could do in this bullpen. So I said, okay, let's keep him around. Let's just see how things go with him because I'm not one to jump to conclusions about players. I definitely want to give it time before I'm ready
Yeah.
to pull the plug on certain guys. And he was somebody who I felt deserved that opportunity. But so far, based on how he's looked, it's definitely a bit concerning to me. And, maybe it's just beginning of the season. He's trying to get himself back into the flow of things. Or it could just be that he's just not the guy for the job in that spot. And they're bringing him in important situations here, too. I mean, when he came in that game against the Mariners and they ended up losing in extra innings, that was a frustrating end to that game. And him coming in there, I was watching that and saying in my head, imagine what this could have been if they had Bernardino here, because they could have put him in that spot instead. And maybe they did want to give Rodriguez the chance, but there are certain scenarios where I'm thinking about it and saying, I feel like Bernardino would have been able to get the job done here because he did it so many times last year.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about baseball. It's unknown. Like, who knows what would have happened. But I think based on how Bernardino pitched last year, I think he's earned a spot in the big leagues. So, Rodriguez has pitched in 4 games already. That was, there was some funky things that happened in that game, but I don't think his stuff was great in that game either. It's been a little bit better the last 2 outings, but I think the last few years, the Red Sox bullpen has not been that bad. I think if you look at last year, I mean, they did have, if you went backwards, Jansen, Martin, Winkowski, Schreiber, even when Whitlock was in there. I think they've done a really good job between executives, going back to even Dombrowski, and that's a strength this year too. For me, it's been one thing: starting pitching, and that's really the end all for any team in baseball. They haven't had it. They haven't been able to grow it. I think they've done a good job though finding guys to be in that bullpen. I mean, they got a lot of guys that are from other organizations and done a good job piecing that together. So we'll see. They're going to have some interesting decisions, which is good. I think they've built some really good depth with, position players, but especially with that bullpen. And yeah, if Joely went out there and gave up 3 or 4 runs, I do think that, in one outing, I think Bernardino knows that he's close to being called back up.
Yeah, I know it's only been a few games, but has he been used yet at all in Worcester?
Yeah, and he did not. He struggled in opening night in Lehigh Valley. He didn't have a great outing. That happens.
Okay.
The beginning of the year is really weird. I'm trying to pull up the numbers here. He went, he went 1 inning. He got out of it. He hit a batter, he walked the batter, but was able to still get out of it. But now with the weather and the way that the day offs have happened, like guys are going a lot of days in between throwing, and our roster is a little bit bigger too. So sometimes you can get caught, lost in the shuffle. But, the Red Sox have a few intriguing guys along with Bernardino, left-handers, Cam Booser and Joe Jakes, who you guys saw last year. And then Lucas Licky, who they got from the Yankees, another lefty. So they've kind of stockpiled some lefties here in Worcester just in case. But I do think that's a strong point for them this year because they can have options. And I like having some relievers that, I don't think you want to invest too many years in them because if you do have to pull the plug, they don't have a lot invested in some of these guys where they can do that and it doesn't hurt them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely smart to have multiple options. And even the outfield situation going into the season, it was, okay, they have multiple guys that they can put in here because even Refsnyder, who's been injured, what's going to happen when he comes back? So it seems like they are going into the rest of this season with options at multiple positions, and having guys at the ready at the AAA level makes a lot of sense for them because injuries do happen and we don't really know when they're going to happen. So if there are guys down there who you feel are major league ready, the more people that are in that situation, the better it is for the Red Sox.
Yeah, and I thought they actually did a really good job last year at times because it was always something. They always had someone get hurt at the wrong time, it seemed. The Kike Hernandez
Yeah.
thing didn't work out. But when Yu Chang was healthy, he was really good at short defensively. Then he got hurt. Then Pablo Reyes got hurt. They just get what a pickup he was. I mean, they traded for him out of AAA. I mean, and then they went to David Hamilton, I think was the 5th or 6th option. And he was up and down, but he got there because of injuries, but they had to go to a 4th or 5th option. And in my years, I remember, when I first got into the Red Sox system, it seemed like they were built where if they lost one guy in the big leagues, it was mass chaos. And I thought last year, despite a bad season for them, when they were losing some big time big league 25-man roster guys, it wasn't too crazy. Like when they had to play Manuel Valdez up there, he did okay. I mean, he held his own. When Abreu finally had to go up there, he's pretty good. When Rafaela had to go up there, even Connor Wong, the years before, they've done a pretty good job, not having one piece get hurt. I think Bobby Dahlbeck is kept around because I've told people this. I saw him play third exclusively in AA. He's a really good third baseman. And if Devers goes down, I guess you have Reyes, but you don't want to have nobody to play third. That's what happened to them in years past. That's what led them into Pablo Sandoval. They had nobody to play that position, and it cost them an obscene amount of money. And I get not wanting to do that. So they try to build it where they can replace guys and have depth instead of just getting killed and held hostage in signing. So they did a pretty good job too, bringing in some, I think what they call organizational guys. I really like Romy Gonzalez, who they got from the White Sox. He played a lot in spring training. Hamilton is still a very good AAA player. Nick Sogard, who you guys saw in spring training, and then we call them the chosen ones, in AA. The big prospects. Hopefully, will be in Worcester by the end of the year. It'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fun guys in the system to look out for in general, too. I mean, Kyle Teal, Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony, that group. Yeah. The big question is, when are those guys going to be getting their opportunity? So it'll be fun to see them continue to work their way through the system.
Yeah, you can really see it. We talk about this a lot because there's a bunch of us that work on the games, especially with the pitching. This will be my 4th season in Worcester, and I can tell you off the top of my head, we've seen 3 big league starters that we thought were big league starters come in general, not just with Worcester, but Alek Manoah, who was in Buffalo, Tanner Bobby last year, who was in Columbus, and Brian Bayo. Other than that, you don't see guys that you think will be big league starters. It is increasingly difficult. When I was younger, there were 26 teams, and then when they expanded, it diluted it even more. But now, with the wild card, the extra wild cards, teams aren't getting rid of anybody. It's impossible to trade for a starter out of AA. Everyone is so scared to do that now. They don't want to, trade Noah Syndergaard. That's what Toronto did. The Mets traded for Zach Wheeler when he was in A-ball, and I remember. That was a Carlos Beltran, and I remember when that trade happened, and I'm like, they got a starter in A-ball, and it was Zach Wheeler, and look how that worked out to be. So
yeah, right.
You really have to find it in scouting. That's where you got to find starters because there's just not a lot. And I always hear people they'll ask me, why can't we get starting pitching? I'm like, it's for everybody. That's what surprised me with the free agent market. But I think that when you look at a lot of the starting pitchers, that I think the top 15 in ERA last year, 10 of them are either on the injured list or struggling. So there's a long-term commitment that doesn't want to be had by organizations. They're finding their own, and they are locking them down now. So that's the mystery question: can the Red Sox do that? Because if they do, we have seen, I think, through every different general manager that they've really been able to find position players. I mean, I know Baltimore's doing a great job of it now, but if you look at the history of the Red Sox and some of the position players that they have groomed, they're got to be in the top 5 in the last 20 years at
Oh, yeah.
developing players, if not top 3, because, Mookie and Xander, I mean, on and on and on. So can they find, and you don't need a lot, Gabby. I mean, look what Brian Bayo's done. Just one, if you can get another starter, I think that's your own, pair him with Bayo, I think that's enough to win. I really do. I think sometimes we're going too overboard. Oh, they need a whole new starting rotation. No, you've seen what one guy or two guys can do is slide everybody down and make the whole difference in that team.
And even Cutter Crawford, too. I mean,
Oh, yes.
he's come
Yeah.
a long way in his development. And I'm so intrigued to see what he can do this year, because at the end of last season, he was doing a lot of things well. And I said, I'm curious to see Andrew Bailey working with him and just improving his development this year, too. And I feel like between him and Bayo, those two guys could be a serious duo for this rotation later on.
I agree with you. I was with Cutter in Portland. I know him personally, and I know that being a reliever is not something he loves to do. But, Stephen Wright used to say this: if you can get on that plane, you'll do whatever. But even in the big leagues, you're not always comfortable doing something you didn't want. And I asked some people in the organization when he was a reliever, and they said he's a starter. And I said, really? Like, oh yeah, he's a big league starter. And, I love asking those guys questions because they know. And I think we've seen he's got some high ceiling. And those other guys too, there's still an unknown, I think. But there's also, I think, an upside to those guys. Tanner Houck's stuff for a number 5 starter is pretty damn good. And Whitlock also wants to be a starter as well. Even though he's great as a reliever, he would rather do that. So they got guys in the roles they want. I've always thought Tanner Houck was a starter. Bobby Dahlbeck told me he's got some of the nastiest stuff he's ever seen. And when hitters tell me that, I side with them for the spot he's in, number 5, even if he goes 4 to 5 innings, you'll take that any day. So it's crazy that starting rotation could be the story of 2024. If they end up getting to the playoffs, I think they would have a big saying in it. They would have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it's been a surprise so far, for sure, because that was the biggest question mark going into the season was what is the starting rotation going to look like? And if they continue to pitch in the way that they are, obviously, too soon to tell what the identity of this rotation really is going to be. But I do like Andrew Bailey's approach that he's taking. And if they continue in this direction and they end up being a playoff team because of it, that starting pitching certainly is going to be a huge conversation for sure.
Yeah, I looked last year, the first 5 starts, they had Kluber and Sale. They gave up 11 runs combined in those first 2 starts. They were, they're your horses. And they, and I said this last year, if your number 1s and 2s aren't good, you have no chance. No one does.
No,
there isn't a team in the big leagues that can, Baltimore went out and got Coleman Burns because their starters weren't good. And they recognized that they needed to fix that. But Kluber didn't work. It's a good flyer to take on, but overall, Sale has got to be your guy, and he wasn't. And he really wasn't the whole time here. Injuries happen, but they're 1 through 3 struggled a lot last year, early in the year, and now they've changed personnel, and you're right. Andrew Bailey has them doing some different things, and it looks good. So it's fun, and I know, from being around those guys, they don't really care about expectations. And I mean, like, people putting bad expectations. It's so hard in baseball to get caught up on that. And, when they're up there playing, none of that matters. You could tell they're a good group. They really like each other. And that's good to see, because that's huge. It's family. You're living with those guys every day. And, I think even going, with Heim and now with Craig Breslow, they've brought in guys that are good character too, which, in any field nowadays, we see that's big.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there is just a good vibe to this team right now this year. And I think they could surprise people in a good way with how this season turns out. So coming up, I am going to be doing something that I like to do with my guests that I bring on here, which is get a record prediction from Mike on how many total wins he thinks that this Red Sox team will end up with by the end of this 2024 regular season. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. Don't forget also, everybody, that we as a network have launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. So if you're looking for a way to stay caught up in everything going on in sports all the time, you can find Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or Amazon Fire TV, and it will just be, no matter what time zone you're in, a live 24/7 feed to keep you caught up, and that's important. So subscribe to Locked On Sports Today as well. So I've had Mike Antonellis here from the Worcester Red Sox, and we've talked about a lot of different things here. Lots of talent that's emerging in the Red Sox system is definitely a theme that we can take away from today's show. Just lots of talent to be excited about on the pitching side, on the position player side. And you've pointed out some of those players that we should keep an eye on as they continue through their development process. And it's always interesting to see how guys work through the system and make their way up because they dream about this for so long. And so for somebody like you, you get that perspective of seeing them when they're trying to prove themselves. And then it's probably so rewarding for you to watch them play in the majors and say, you know, I got to cover them firsthand when they were still in the lower levels of the Red Sox system.
Yeah, no, for years, my first year, I started my career in 97 and then I got to Portland in 05. That was kind of the big team. That was Theo's like first draft class. So it was Pedroia, Hanley, Papelbon, Lester, on and on and on. And I would tell people, and they, the fans were still skeptical. I've always said Theo brought the minor leagues here, player development. He made minor league baseball cool in New England. Because when I grew up, people did not want to hear about minor league players. They didn't care. They're all suspects, but now it's kind of going the opposite way. But there's still some reservations. But in 14, when I saw Mookie, it was as no brainer as you get. And it's exciting to see guys that everyone knows they're going to be great. And then people get to finally see it. We get a sneak peek of it, and even other players, that's fun too. But it's been very rewarding. I love it. It never gets old. Any of the players that I cover, when they have their major league debut, I've got to be able to see it. And I get nervous like a parent now because I'm old. So, but it's great. Yeah. And now some of them are coaches, and but Mookie's one he's very special in my. It's tough to watch him play in LA, but I'm happy for him. And same with Xander and all the and Vasquez. Yeah. But it's great. I think that the Red Sox do a good job with these guys being able to handle going to the big leagues. I think they get introduced a lot to media responsibilities now earlier in A-ball, which, if you ask guys in the 60s and 70s, they played in towns that people didn't know, and then they were in the big spotlight. I think that was harder. Now it's easier. They're getting exposed. They're on NESN. They're on podcasts. And then it's still hard, of course, but I think the introduction and the way they're getting pushed through is more comfortable with them than it's ever been.
Yeah, and it's great because it's a great way for people to really get exposed to some of these prospects too, and get to know them before they get up to the majors and get familiar with some of these guys so that they can start to follow their journey. And then when they do get called up for the first time, people aren't as much like, who is that? Like, I've never heard of that player. Now it's, oh, I'm so excited for this player. Like, there was a lot of hype when Rafaela got called up because people knew who he was and were following his journey. And people were just so excited to see him play in a major league game, for the first time.
Yeah, I think I probably first saw the lower levels get impacted in a big way with Moncada and Benintendi. That was that was maybe the first time where people were going crazy before those guys get to Portland. Usually it would be when they got to Portland when I was there. Now it's completely changed. And that Greenville Drive team, they got a lot of Red Sox fans there because some of those lower level teams have been loaded. Fans should look at some of the rosters that Greenville and Salem have had. It's crazy. You wouldn't believe some of the players that they've had. So, and I think I love it. When I grew up minor league in Pawtucket was close, we never went. I wasn't a minor league person, to be honest, but I think now it's such a great venue for fans. Kids, they can get an experience at a minor league park and it can be just as good as going to a big league game. But yeah, Portland is going to see a lot of attendance early in the year. It's not great weather early in the year in Maine, but I think a lot of people will go there because they know that Teal, Anthony, and Meyer might not be there long, and even Nick York. And there's always guys you don't think of that might be on the radar that end up in the big leagues. They're always off the grid guys.
Yeah, which makes it so fun too. That it's like, oh, I wouldn't have even thought of that player making it to the majors, and it's just so interesting to see all the talent levels that really come through the system, and lots of guys who are eager to get their shot up in the major league level. But I do have to ask you, based on everything we've talked about, everything you've seen so far from this team in these first couple series here, which, by the way, I'm so happy that they're almost done with this road trip because I'm ready for baseball being at a regular normal time on the East Coast again. But taking everything into consideration, how many wins do you think that this Red Sox team ends up with this year?
Yeah, I like them being over 500. I'm probably going to be a little more optimistic. I'm going to go 87. I think they can be 6 games over 500. I think they can go 87. It's tougher now because you don't play. You can look at it a couple of different ways, but not playing teams a lot can be tough too because for hitters they don't see the same pitchers, so they're going to be an advantage both ways for the Red Sox. And not seeing everyone in the East, but it's not easy playing. I think last year, I thought the league kind of balanced out because, everyone had to play everyone. So the teams that were dominating, they ran into a little tough spell. So I do like the schedule, but I like the Red Sox being over 500. And I don't know if they're going to get into the playoffs because I think there's so many good teams around them. So it's going to be no shame to their season. I think they're going to be so many teams that I think are good in the American League, and they might just miss out of the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I do think they'll be over 500. I was saying 83 wins for a while. There's just a lot of good teams in the American League, but I do think they will be a better team than people were willing to give them credit for before the season started. And I think the starting pitching is really going to make or break what happens for this team this season. Ultimately, at the end of the day, can they maintain this level of competitiveness that they've shown early on? And that's something that's going to be a question heading into the rest of the season. But Mike, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I really enjoyed your insight on just so many different things here related to the Red Sox and the minor league system and the current team and everything we talked about.
My pleasure. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And everybody, as always, thanks for tuning into the show, and keep the faith and go Red Sox. And I will catch you next time.